It's been over a decade since indie horror game Amnesia the Dark Descent first released. Whether viewed on the channels of YouTube reactionaries or discussed in whispers on school playgrounds the world over, it's safe to say that this game quickly became a darling of both indie and horror gaming. Rediscovering it on the Switch eShop one night as part of the discounted Amnesia Collection tapped into a part of my psyche long since forgotten, and I had to buy it. But how well does this haunting tale of vengeance hold up? Find out in this review. Before you do, however, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications every time I upload, leave a like and comment any suggestions on how to improve my reviews going forward. I love you guys, let's get into it. In the year 1839, you wake up in a mysterious castle with no memory of how you got there. Immediately after, you were tasked by your former self with taking down a man who supposedly did something vile to you. That's the premise of this game, and in order to unravel the rest of the story, you must piece it together with the notes you find by traversing this expansive locale. This tell-don't-show approach was a smart one for the developers to take, especially when you remember that this was an indie project. But the storytelling here is truly top-notch, and scattering these artifacts of your backstory around lets them serve as not only a reprieve, but also as motivation to press on. They are really well narrated, and taken as a whole, this game has a gripping narrative that doesn't disappoint. The atmosphere evoked here is ridiculously unsettling from the get-go, despite the game's age showing at times. This is helped massively by the sound design, which is as dismal as it ever was. It's amplified in a way that makes something as seemingly mundane as the house settling feel terrifying. There's also moments where you discover the former sites of various atrocities and the sound design seems bent on breaking you. There's also visual representations of terror, such as the ever-pursuing shadow, which has this disgusting fleshy manifestation that will show up every so often, just to stress you out pretty much. In fact, the only time this chilling tone was broken was a late-game quest involving rescuing a certain character. Without spoiling it, let me just say that it was handled with a laughable level of goofiness that felt incredibly out of place. But this atmosphere is great, and it's amplified by the tight and hard-to-navigate level design. Moments like the first time you encounter that goddamn Kaernk are designed to induce heart attack levels of stress, and the level design uses relatively simple elements to maximal effect. Conversely, the area following this is so serene and open that it almost feels like a sanctuary by comparison. Its musical accompaniment and blue lighting will be sorely missed as you descend further into the darkness to remedy your amnesia. See what I did there? Trying to get past enemies in these areas is a horrifying enough experience, but the later game will force you into situations where you must interact with and distract these monsters to progress. Of course, you still have to avoid and outwit them as opposed to fighting, which is the genius gameplay element that makes Amnesia such a unique survival horror experience. There are also areas which flip this narrow corridor design on its face in favor of large, open spaces with nowhere to hide. You really don't know true terror until you hear the sound of a brute groaning in the choir. As simple as these areas are, it would have been nice to have some sort of optional map screen. Even though I get that survival horror needs you to feel somewhat disoriented, it's just that I would sometimes come back to the game after a hiatus and be confused as to where I needed to find something. The sanity mechanic is a stroke of genius that forces you to conserve it as much as possible. This is done by way of solving puzzles, as well as staying near sources of light and not looking directly at the enemies. This is great because these objectives can, at times, be contradictory to each other. Solving puzzles at a fast rate is great, sure, but it's also important to take time whilst doing these so as to avoid monster encounters and such. Using light sources will inevitably use all of them up, forcing you to find more lantern oil and tinderboxes, lest you end up in total darkness. These light sources also attract monsters, but without them, your sanity will slowly slip away from you, and so it's really important to just strike a balance. Having lower sanity makes the game harder to get through in a few ways. It can give you unsettling hallucinations, make you more sluggish, rob you of your hearing, and even force you to crawl slowly on the ground at times. Admittedly, when the mechanic of hiding from monsters goes unchecked, it can become a little stale and essentially turn into hide until the monster sounds and music go away and then continue. So a little more variety in encounters would have been a welcome change for sure. On the presentation end of things, the game runs really smoothly and in my experience on Switch, feels great portable. This is especially true when you rug up in bed late at night with it. Just make sure to go to the bathroom before you do, because walking through your house after playing can be taxing. Unfortunately, there are quite a few bugs fairly early on which prevent you from picking up items and opening doors. The only way that I found to fix these was for me to return to save points. There are also certain areas where you'll inexplicably fall out of the map and die. Tread carefully, more like the devs should tread carefully when designing a game. God, stupid shit. Overall, Amnesia: The Dark Descent is still a terrifying experience that feels right at home on consoles a decade later. The deep level of immersion it offers is aided by great presentation and storytelling, and somewhat hindered by occasional bugs. Regardless of this, it earns a 7 out of 10 from me, and I can't recommend this enough for anybody craving a good survival horror experience. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of Amnesia: The Dark Descent. If you did, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications every time I upload, leave a like, and also comment any suggestions on how to improve my content going forward. See you guys in the next one. Bye.